It was late autumn when Ella decided to venture into the forest alone. She was 17 and loved the quiet of the woods, especially this time of year when the leaves glowed in deep oranges and reds. The trees stretched up like twisted fingers into the cold, clouded sky, and the air had that earthy smell that always reminded her of change and secrets. But that evening, something felt off. The usual sounds of the forest, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, were absent. Instead, there was only a thick, oppressive silence. Ella tried to shake the feeling, laughing it off as paranoia. Yet, every few steps, she found herself looking back over her shoulder, expecting. An hour in, as the light began to fade, she stumbled across a small clearing she hadn't seen before. In the center, a single cabin sat, old and rotting, with windows covered in grime and a door hanging slightly ajar. She felt a sudden chill as she approached, the air seeming to drop several degrees. Against her better judgment, she stepped inside. The floor creaked under her weight. Old, dusty furniture lay scattered across the room, and broken dishes littered the floor. It smelled like damp wood and something faintly metallic like rusted iron. Or was it blood? As she moved through the room, an unsettling chill crept over her, a crawling, insistent feeling that unseen eyes were following her every step. She spun around more than once, heart pounding, but each time, she was met with nothing but silence and shadows. Her skin prickled, a cold sweat gathering, as her breath came shallow and quick. In the dim corners, shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on shapes that flickered just out of sight. And then, faintly, almost imperceptible, a whisper slithered through the air. It was everywhere and nowhere, an echo she couldn't trace, sinking in her mind like a dark secret. Just then, a photograph on the wall caught her eye. The image was faded, but it showed a young girl around her age, standing in the very spot Ella was standing now, her eyes wide and hollow. Ella leaned in closer, and as she did, a splintered mirror on the opposite wall caught her reflection, except the girl in the mirror wasn't her. She was wearing Ella's clothes and staring right back, but her eyes were completely black. Frozen in fear, Ella watched as the girl in the mirror's mouth stretched into a grin, an impossible, unnatural smile that made Ella's stomach churn. The figure raised her hand and pointed, not at the mirror, but directly at her. Panicking, Ella stumbled backward, knocking over a small table. Suddenly, she heard slow, heavy footsteps approaching from the darkened hallway at the back of the cabin. She turned to run, only to feel cold fingers grip her wrist. She screamed, yanking herself free and bolting out of the cabin. Behind her, she heard a faint, sinister giggle echoing from within. Outside, the forest seemed darker, the trees twisted and unfamiliar. She tried to retrace her steps, but every path led her back to the clearing with that cursed cabin. No matter which way she went, she always ended up back at the beginning. Hours passed, and as dawn finally approached, she collapsed in exhaustion by the cabin door. When she opened her eyes, she found herself back inside. The girl with the hollow eyes stared down at her, that eerie smile frozen on her face. "You can't leave," the girl whispered, her voice echoing through Ella's mind. "You're home now." The last thing Ella saw was the figure's shadowy hand reaching for her, pulling her down into a darkness so thick, she forgot where she ended and it began. They say if you walk past that old cabin in the woods now, you might catch a glimpse of a girl staring out the window, her wide, hollow eyes following your every step, waiting for someone to join her.